bought this bike back in 2014. It's got about 36 odd thousand miles on it. And the reason why it is the worst bike that I've ever owned is simply because this bike is not without its faults. And I'm going to tell you guys exactly why that is today. There has to be some logical reason why Brandon says this. There's absolutely no way he can sit here and say that the M109R that he still owns is the worst bike that he's ever owned, because if it was the worst bike he ever owned, he would have got rid of the worst bike he ever owned and got the best bike that he's ever owned, because this totally is not the worst or is the worst bike he's ever owned.
I think Bicasso might be a little crazy, people. He just might be just a little bit.
Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm somewhat of an avid investor, and I have investment ideas in my head sometimes. And I had the bright idea a few years back that I wanted to flip motorcycles for profit. Now, if you guys aren't aware of what the flip is, basically you buy something for low, somebody that's trying to get rid of something that you can find at a discount, and then you try to sell it for more than what you paid for it. That is the essential flip. So in this case, I wanted to flip motorcycles. I had this bright idea, my arm's getting tired. I had this bright idea that I was gonna buy a motorcycle for cheap, and then I was gonna sell it for a premium. Basically somebody that's selling a bike on Craigslist, they're trying to get rid of it, trying to get out from under payments, and then somebody like me comes in and throws cash in the face like, boop, I'll take it off your hands. And that was my idea. Now, I have successfully done this before, and if you guys wanna hear about that story, definitely drop a like and a comment down below, thumbs up, all that, so you guys can let me know that you guys want to see that. But it's a hell of a story. But basically, I came off of that high, off of that momentum, and I thought to myself that I could do it again. So essentially, somebody had a 2006, so yeah, you kind of catching on. It's not this M109R that was the worst, but there was another one. Yes, I've owned another M109R at some point in time. But yes, somebody was selling the M109R on Craigslist for $4,000, and in my head, I'm thinking, wait, what? M109R for $4 grand. So this one I paid $7,500 for, a 2007 M109R, and it had about 7,500 miles on it. This one was going for $4,000 and it had 20,000 miles on it. When you look at the pictures, there's nothing wrong with it. The owner seems to have kept the bike up fairly well. Now the thing is, when you look at the Kelley Blue Book motorcycle catalog for the M109R with that many amount of miles on it, you're looking at something around 6,500 bucks. 6,500 bucks that you can sell it, but of course it depends on supply and demand. You get it during tax season, people are willing to throw money at you, and they'll say, hey, I want that bike no matter what it costs. So to me, I figured I could sell it definitely for more than what I paid for it. And when I went out there and looked at the KBB again, it was 6,500 bucks. So I was wondering, why the heck is this guy selling this bike for $4,000? So I hit him up. And the rules of the flip is also never pay what the asking price is if you can. Again, you're trying to get it for as low as possible. That's not rude or nothing, that's just the name of the game. So $4,000, I offered them $3,000. I said, hey, will you take $3,000? And they said, nah, let me think about it. And the way I worded it was, hey, if you want to sell this bike today, $3,000. Later on, they came back and said, sure, I'll take $3,000. Now, being that I wasn't so far away, Mobile, Alabama, that's about 2.5 hours from me. Me and my uncle, we hopped in the truck and said, let's go get this bike. Now, most people would probably not ride it back, but again, I'm trying to save costs. I'm trying to do the easiest thing possible. I knew the bike was rideable. The guy told me the bike was rideable because, you know, that was my plan. Went down there and with my gear and everything in the truck, no trailer, nothing like that. And we were like, we're gonna get this bike. So we show up to the parking lot. The guy pulls up promptly on the motorcycle. You can hear it chopping. It sounds like a J-brake pulling up. It sounded good. Bike sounded good. Downshifted, sounded good. And he asks me, he said, hey, you wanna ride it? And I was thinking to myself, no, I'm good. That's where I messed up. I should have test rode it, but in my mind, I'm thinking I don't want him to see that I know how to ride this bike. I don't want him to come back and say, oh well, you know what this is, $4,000, and change the price. So I told him, you know, because he asked me, had you ever been on a bike with power like the M109? I was like, you know, I've been on the M50, the M90. You know, I'm stepping my way up. This is the next logical step. So, you know, basically after all the little small talk, we agreed. Roughly 5 minutes, I want to say. The bike was sold, $3,000 cash in hand, and it was easy. I hopped on the bike and we rode off. Next stop was to get some food. And I know what you're thinking, Brandon, get to the point. Why is this the worst? Why is the M109 the worst bike you've ever owned? I'm getting there. All right, so we're going to go get food. I'm riding the bike. The bike feels like it's good, but I noticed something weird about its character. So going from first to second, the bike felt a little off. And I didn't really notice this until I got in probably the worst moments to ever experience this. was in a curve. So we're headed to the restaurant. I'm coming up to a stop sign, and basically the bike drops from second gear back to neutral. I don't even need to explain why that's a bad idea. So I'm not, at this point I'm thinking, okay, maybe that was a one-off. My 109 has done that. Okay, so me and Jared are eating. My uncle, the guy with the white chieftain that you guys see, the white Indian chieftain. I tell him that it happened and basically rule it out. Maybe it was just a dud. Some demo bikes even go from second back to neutral. It happens. Well, this bike happened a lot. So basically on the way home, it did it again. And and this is me going onto the on-ramp onto the interstate. I didn't think nothing else of it. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, hell, I'm in it. I'm headed home with this bike. I get home and I do a little bit more testing. Essentially what ends up happening is the bike goes from first to second, and then it drops back to neutral under a hard load. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the M109R, that's called second gear failure. And essentially what it means is you got to get your transmission rebuilt. Because the gears, basically, when the M109 first came out in 2006, a select number of them had this weird issue where the transmission would slip from second back to neutral. And again, if you're going from a stoplight pull-off in regular traffic and your bike is dropping from second back to neutral and you can't shift from first to second to third, that's a problem. So eventually I learned how to deal with it. And at this point I'm figuring out, oh my God, I've been shammed, bamboozled, whipsawed, conned, all that. I've been conned. Bicasso got conned. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, now I got to put money back into this bike. And also, come to find out, the fork seal was leaking. So the next thing for me to do was to go to my local dealership and ask them, what exactly can I do to fix this? Because again, I paid $3,000 for the bike. Luckily, I didn't pay $4,000. I paid $3,000 for the bike. And it kind of gave me some wiggle room to that $6,000 and $6,500 mark where I would have to sell the bike to still make a profit. Oh God. But y'all, it gets so much worse. So I come to find out that the fix meaning fixing the transmission, this is essentially a drivetrain transmission issue. It would cost me roughly $2,500 to $3,000 to fix this transmission. And the reason being is because the way that Suzuki designed the M109R, and I'm sure other bikes are designed the same way and maybe they've changed it since then, but the gearing was not separate from the engine, meaning the gears were inside the engine casing. So to fix the gearing, you had to snatch the entire engine out, and you had to crack the engine case to get to the gearing. That's expensive. So at that point I'm thinking, okay, so this went from a $3,000 bike to at least a $5,500 to $6,000 bike just to get it back running. And that's not even including the fork seals that are also leaking. So at this point I'm thinking, I got a dud. I done got duped. So what I ended up doing, I had to think to myself, if I'm gonna put $2,500 back into this bike, there is no guarantee that I'm gonna be able to sell this bike for $6,000 or for $6,500, because at this point I'm cutting it thin. So what I ultimately decided to do was cut my losses. But what I did do, I got the fork seals replaced. I spent the $350 to get the fork seal replaced. So now, other than my time and gas and energy to go down and get the bike, I got roughly $3,350 invested in this bike. And what I decided to do was just put it out there on Craigslist, be honest, because the guy that I bought the bike from wasn't honest initially about the gearing, which is fine. But on me, I should have ridden it. I should have ridden it when I got down there, because had I known that when I ridden it, I probably would have offered him $2,500 there right on the spot and said, hey, this bike's got second gear failure, man. I'm gonna have to probably take a little bit more off of that just because I had to get that fixed. So I probably would have done that, so that's my fault for not riding it. So for those of you out there that are buying bikes, make sure you test ride it. And when you do, ride the snot out of them if you can. Don't be abusive to them or nothing like that, because that's other people's property. But if you're gonna spend your money on it, definitely make sure you know what you're getting into before you do it. But again, I decided to cut my losses, so I ended up putting the bike out there for $33.50. I was honest with the buyers that were the prospective buyers. Hey, this bike has second gear failure. You're gonna have to get that fixed, but I did get the fork seals replaced. So essentially, somebody that was further out from me, about 4 or 5 hours, I think they came down from Tennessee and was like, you know, I had the bike out there for, initially I had the bike out there for right at 4 and it wasn't getting the bikes, and I dropped it to 35, and then that person hit me up and was like, hey, will you take 3? And I was like, hell, why not? So I ended up selling the bike for 3, and then I even offered to meet him halfway out of his 5-hour journey. I think I met him 2.5 or 3 hours in, just so I can get this bike off my hands, because this guy really wanted this bike, and he said that he could fix it himself. He didn't have to take it to a shop. He knew how to crack it open and do it. So long story short, I took an L on that bike, and somebody that really wanted it got it, although I made nothing off of it. I ended up losing. But of course, with investments, you win some, you lose some. But my whole thought process was, I'm going to buy this bike, I'm going to make money off of this bike, and I'm going to actually get a chance to ride another bike, because that's also cool. You know, you buy bikes, you can ride them for a little bit, and then you can sell them. And definitely even a plus if you can sell them for more than what you paid for it. So I did get a chance to at least ride that bike, and it still was a cool experience. And of course, learn from my mistakes. When you're buying something, definitely make sure you can test ride it, bang it through the gears, make sure you're not getting a dud, man, because you will get duped if you're not careful. So yeah, that is the story of how the M109 is the worst bike I've owned. And while it was not this M109R, it was still an M109R. But yeah, if y'all want to hear the story about the bike that actually worked out, definitely don't forget to hit that thumbs up and that subscribe button so you don't miss that story, because it's actually a really good one. It's like one of those once in a lifetime type deals. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and yeah, I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.